So, hi everybody, we'll make this official. My name is Nancy Knowles and I'm on the board for Arts Center East, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Amelia Diaz Ettinger tonight to read for the ACE Writing Project. And before I introduce her, what I'd like to do is just double check with folks who are here tonight. We will do a few allow a few folks to do some reading of work after Amelia has read. I know that David, Mehmet, and Lindsay and Greg all have things to read. Is there anyone else here tonight who would like to read after? And you feel free to use the chat or just leap out there and announce yourself. Okay, last month we, for those of you who weren't with us for Shandel's reading, we sort of gave a little pelican poem challenge, and so we may have some bird poems tonight. Okay, great. Well, I would like to welcome Amelia, and I consider her to be a great friend of mine. So I'm just going to say, for those of you that maybe you all know her, but she's been a teacher. She's a mountain biker. She's a knitter. She's the cleaner of chicken coops, in case you didn't know that. She's a Zumba dancer.
Wow.
As well as being a wife and a mother and a grandmother and an author. And she's got 2 books out now. The first book is called Speaking at a Time, and it's from Red Bat Books. And the current book that I believe she's going to read mostly from tonight is called Learning to Love a Western Sky, and it's from Airlie Press. And I just wanted to, again, to give it a kind of maybe a little more formal introduction, I just wanted to read a blurb. Was looking around. And so just so a little preview, this is Kim Stafford talking about Amelia's work. He says, "These poems sing a duet of longing, love for a Puerto Rico far away and long ago, and devotion to the American West here and now. We would be poorer without such witness to both homelands here in conversation through poetry. The rich double consciousness of Amelia Ettinger travels the lyric highway between then and now, there and here. She reminds us to recover the exotic dimensions of memory and savor direct experience now." So just a lovely, lovely introduction to her work. And so what I'd like to do is welcome Amelia, and just so that you know, what I'm going to do is mute everybody while she's reading so that we can really hear her work without distraction. And then when it's time for a Q&A, I'll just invite you all to unmute and you can leap in and ask questions. If you would like to use the chat to register some questions as we go, that's fine. We can come back to that and revisit that when she's done reading. Okay.
Thank you, Nancy.
Oh. I'm going to unmute now. You should be unmuted, Amelia, hopefully.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for the Art Center East and the Writing Project for giving me this opportunity to read from my new book, Learning to Love a Western Sky by Airlie Press. Just to give you a little bit of background on the book is divided in loosely 4 parts. The beginning is a collection of poems of yearning for the culture that was left behind. And it also deals a section of aging in a foreign country, the emotions that go with it. And it also goes into actually what it's like living to learn a Western sky, because I think learning is a volition, it's an act of will. And so in a way, that's what I wanted to intend with this book. And I would like to start by reading the first poem of the book, which is the premise for it. And this poem is entitled Patria, and it's in English mainly. It's not all in Spanish. So, Patria, my dear beloved, describe Patria. Homeland, too formal. Country, no warmth. But Patria is food, family, colorful hands. I shudder naming your towns, Lares, Ay Bonito, Boquerón, y Caguas. See, it is always Caguas. I long to see your beaches, your red soil, feel your hot breath against my shoulder, to smell pasteles wrapped in green hope and plantain leaves, to kiss my wise old man and pet your bony dogs. I long to feel the mildew of the Caribbean, filter the marrow of cell, cement, and memory, to recall your loudspeakers shouting promise and despair. I long to feel that languid sun, extreme, suffocating, rapturous, transforming our men arrogant and loud with desires beyond your narrow width, who dance and drink, love and think with the intensity of your sky that limits nothing, who wear guayaberas and play dominoes and make love with just a look. Your mothers and girls, humble and strong, who run time in heels and steel, making and marking, keeping you afloat in the perfume of rightfulness, in full lips that whisper a future as uncertain as an eyelash, but make you believe in God and children and that there is no other earth. Beloved Patria, how is it to be you, especially now, when your children flee, when your soil is left behind in empty lots, the hum, the lost verses of mute sung in a Caribbean breeze, this song of farewell. Given to that theme, I would like to follow it up with an ode to one of the poets that was so influential in my upbringing. And he was a Cuban poet, but I was lucky enough to hear poetry not only at home. I grew up in a house of men, which all of them recited poetry after dinner. But the television, the show at noon, had we came home for having lunch from the Catholic school for 2 or 3 hours, and the TV show was on after lunch. And Guillen and Pales Matos will offer poetry. They would just read their poems in the noon show. And hearing that timbre, that rhythm, it was just make you want to eat words. It was just so much fun. So this is ode to a particular poem of Nicolas Guillen, Sensemaya, which is a Yoruba. A lot of words in here are Yoruba. He's an African Cuban poet. How would it be to hear the song that kills the snake? Would it be the whistle of goat hooves spinning on a dancer's neck? The sound of distant drums from your glorious pen? Sensemaya, generations, follow your path to the snakes. Your rhythm forged in Africa, your yearning light that makes roots, bite the red soil and the grass to hide the snake, the land, the music, the food of your forefathers. Balm of Cuba in every stanza. Your words a gift to El Caribe Negro, now cast in mortar and steel. Could this Caribbean see the snake's glass eyes? Hear Manjombe Bombe, sing your song to kill the snake? Mayombe Bombe, Mayombe Bombe, Mayombe. The book that turns after some poems that are about emotion, what it's like to live in under the western sky, to poems directly related to the land that you live in inside this western sky. So I would like to read to you a poem. It's called Titration of Winter or the Rhythm of Somerville. Now, titration is a chemical term. It is actually, excuse me, is actually when you do an essay that you have this solvent that you put in to determine the amount of a particular substance, and you titrate one drop, minuscule drop at a time until the beaker changes color and then tells you the quantity given within. Okay, titration of winter in, or the rhythm of Somerville. Dressed in her bridal gown, Mount Emily sighs upon the valley, a cold cadence that waits a light, a moving lane, or just the present. Renewed by a man blowing on his hands, he forgot his gloves. The John Deere tractor removes snow at a glacial pace under the grayish sun. One lone elk standing ground is for a canvas for the snow. A child's eyes peek from under a coat. Eyelashes gleam with frost. A cup of tea steams on an empty table. An elderly woman taps a window. The junco's desperate flight. As a flicker mocks, the horse cast down with his heavy blanket. A titration so precise can only describe a town so grand, so small, so white. Now, after living so long in under the western sky, you can help but feel the landscape becomes part of the makeup of the narrator, the poet. And with it, new politics arise. So this poem that I would like to share, which is towards the end of the book, is called Vulgarization. And it was my first political poem. And by the way, it also reflects one of my loves, which is being on a bicycle. I think I have been on a bicycle since I was 3 years old and have not stopped since. Um, and some of you know Mara, so you might even recognize this place if you ever hike or bike in Mara. Vulgarization for our times. The old cowgirl rides up her mountain on two fat wheels and wonders, what happened to men in fedoras? They seem to have gone after Vietnam. Culture men, gracious, solicitous, lathered in cologne, disappeared with the black and white TV. Hosts with ties striving for that special chosen word, Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America. She takes a long breath and sits at a picnic table. At 6,000 feet, her chosen town below looks so small. With a hand over the panorama, she can erase the colors of this town, the chimney smokes, the quiet streets. If she cries now, who will hand her a handkerchief? Fedoras and handkerchiefs lost in one small generation. Grand Run kitchens still cook homemade meals. A sweet inhalation for the cowgirl. She wants to stop the exodus of gallant words. The man addressing the nation, it is not what you can do. Her chest feels laden with muck, just as her tires. Mud has hardened on them, but at least it's Mount Emily's mud. She thinks as she mounts her trek and swiftly rides down the valley. Thank you. Okay, do you guys have any questions? That sound that you heard is my dog. He is not happy. Nancy, you had a question?
Give me a chance to unmute everybody. Hold on a second.
Thank you guys for being here tonight. I really appreciate seeing all your faces. And those of you who don't have the video, I see your names. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Well, I'm enjoying this. So I don't have any questions. I just groovy.
I wonder if Teresa got in. Megan Cruz, she's a poet. David and Jody. Ted here.
Okay, so I've unmuted folks. So, or I tried to, not sure. Anyway, so would you like to ask Amelia questions about her writing or particular poems or life in general?
How long have you lived here?
Since I was in my 20s. So I won't tell you the number because then you will figure out my age.
Tell me the number first.
But a long, long time. I gave birth to my kids here and they grew up here, and I feel like I grew up too here.
Yeah.
Did you come directly to the West here from Puerto Rico?
Pretty much. I actually shopped for graduate schools on my way through.
Okay.
And I stopped in many states. I think I saw most of Eastern United States. And then I stopped in Pullman, and that's where I did my master's degree in biology.
Oh, okay.
So I have been, and I fell in love with the West.
Yeah.
It was a place that felt that I could be anonymous and well-known at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I made this sort of reverse journey from not the far West, but from Texas, Oklahoma to here to DC area. So it's it wasn't exactly culture shock. It was more like what I didn't know I was looking for till I found it kind of situation. Yeah. It's fascinating. Your imagery of the West is beautiful. It's like you literally grew up out of it. So it really, a lot of your stuff reminds me of where I grew up.
So Amelia, there's a couple questions in the chat. Here's the first one. Well, there's several there. Working on this, did you find yourself growing more nostalgic for your home country?
You know, a lot of these poems were right around when Maria happened. And I couldn't write about it directly because I was very conflicted. And I have a new project working on that. But it bounced me back of wanting to be on the island and smelling the food that I missed. But I couldn't deal with Maria directly because there was an awful lot of guilt of not being present. So I kind of, for this book, I kind of went back to the roots and talked. There is a couple of poems about people from the island and memories too. So yes, I mean, there was a lot of conflict emotionally when I was writing it, partly because of Maria.
And that question was from Laura, Alex.
Thank you, Laura. That was a good question.
Shandel asked, who were the poets on the TV show that was on when you would come home from school?
Well, one of them was Nicolas Guillen, which is an Afro-Cuban poet. And the other one is Pales Matos, which is a Puerto Rican poet, also in the same vein as Nicolas Guillen. They're both onomatopoeic poets, and they use a lot of Yoruba words with sounds of animals in their poetry. And while they read it, it was almost like a modern form of rap that was not invented yet. But it had that cadence. So, and they were so rich. I mean, both of them had deep voices and that just were full. So I was just enthralled that people could make this sound that you could see with their words. You can see these visions of birds and coconuts and mangoes and everything was so vivid. It was very, as a 10-year-old, I remember thinking, how did you do that? How can you sing without singing? How can you paint without painting? And so it was a beautiful, beautiful TV show at noon. And of course, there were some other ridiculous sitcoms in there, but it was an amazing TV show.
And here's a question from Megan Cruz. Do you consider yourself a poet primarily? And what draws you to poetry or other forms?
That's my teacher asking me that question. Thank you, Megan. You know, I never thought of myself as a poet or a writer. I just love doing both. But I've been writing poetry since I was 3 years old. I used to just go, Tio, Tio, Tio. I live with my uncles. Tio, 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 I have a poem, I have a poem. And they will sit down patiently and write it down. And I had a book of those that I lost when there was a flood in my house in Pullman. So I don't have the book anymore, but I memorized some. But absolutely love writing fiction, especially because of a lady named Megan Cruz that gives me the best prompts. I don't know if I answered your question, Megan.
She says, ha, ha, ha. And you did.
Yeah.
Great. Are there other questions? I'm going to change us to gallery view so we can kind of see each other a little bit. I don't know if I'm changing my screen so I can see everybody.
I have a question, Amelia.
Sure.
So you mentioned, well, in your reading that a fairly recent poem was the first political poem you've written, but I want to challenge you on that point. I wonder if much of what you have written up until this point is also political in some ways.
I think you're right, James. I think the poem Vulgarization addresses a particular time that is very clear in most of our minds about the present time and the vulgarization that is happening. So I think it was the first time I addressed politics directly without kind of coloring it under a different venue. I think I was more direct in this poem because growing up, I always said I was not political. But when you live in a colonial island, the colonization itself cannot make you but respond politically to the situation.
Yeah, thank you.
And I say there's a poet, Sylvia Wheeler, who I once interviewed, and she had the quote, she said, all poetry is political. So I guess it just depends on how you describe politics. So I know I have a number of them. I didn't really start out to write something political, but just something that you include that's in your world. It starts happening. So
It does color.
yeah, and I think,
Are
yeah.
Are there other questions for Amelia? I'm curious, Amelia, if you, I mean, I know you have a drawer, and we've long talked about this legendary drawer where all these great old works come from. But do you have a process? Do you have a way that you sit down to a task and generate?
You know, I think I answered this a little bit in class this week, with a question about conflict and plot in writing. Writing, I'm trying to do it more of as a discipline now. Before it was, whenever, and I will just go, oh, I feel the muses, and I will write something down. Now it's a different process, and I think because I have the time now to take it more seriously. So now I sit down with a purpose of writing. But what I have found out is that my own personal emotions taint whatever is I'm going to be writing. If I feel a tremendous amount of sadness, I know I'm going to need to write a poem. And if I'm in neutral, I can actually work on characterization and plot and narrative and work on a little story. And if I'm angry, that is very interesting because I have no idea what is going to come out. And usually it would be a new character that I can develop later. I was reading a news Christmas letter last Christmas about this lady, which I adore. But her letter was really braggadocious about all the stuff that they have achieved in the year. And I felt like, I am so angry with you. So I end up writing. I mean, I got actually very angry. So I end up writing this character. There is an old man that is a mute living in a nursing home. And so I start writing, and then I realized I really like to write about this character. So I think that's what propels a lot of the writing. But I like it when my emotions are in neutral, and then I can sit down and really think about voice and plan things with my head than and it tends to be a more balanced work. But poetry, I tend to do a lot out of an emotional response. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Get angry, that's the answer.
Actually, when you're sad, some of the most lovely things can come out, because I think when you're vulnerable, in sadness, you're vulnerable and you are allowing the universe to touch you. And then you can really see some things in a different light.
Great. Other questions for Amelia?
I want to hear some of your early poems, like when you were 3 years old. To say you.
Okay. Ryan, I can do that.
Okay.
Una estrella brilló en el cielo con tanto y tanto esplendor que cuando la gente la vio, todo el mundo se asombró. La estrella se cayó y una niñita la recogió. Mas cuando en sus manos la vio, una muñeca se le volvió. I mean, that was,
Yeah. Okay.
I was 4.
I didn't understand any of those words, but I got it.
Got the baby part.
Well, maybe a few, but
It's very rhymey.
Yeah. yeah. It's like what I wrote at that age.
I thought that every poem had to rhyme at the end.
Oh yeah.
So the part of the what's it called? The predator is perfect for that.
Okay, other questions for Amelia?
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for those that are interested in getting a copy of one or the other of Amelia's books, do check out the chat. I put links. Yeah, David Mamet's got the recent book from Airlie Press.
Right.
Yeah, I read it in one big gulp and then I put it somewhere and now I can't find it. But I have a copy of the other one, I think, somewhere. Ah, there it is.
And
This is
one
the
up
first
there,
book from Red Bat.
Mm.
And so there's links in the chat for if you're interested in purchasing either of those. And I'm sure if you're a local, Amelia would eventually, autograph it for you if you want.
whenever we can see each other again. And
Right.
In 3D.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. Mary said, thank you so much for sharing your words and ideas with us all, Amelia. So,
Thank you, Mary.
um,
Thank you all.
so we have some readers for the open mic. So we'll transition to that. I'm not going to give us a break tonight since we're relatively early in our timeline. So we'll go right into the open mic session. I'll have David, Lindsay, and then Greg read, and I have a Pelican poem too. So I'll wrap it up at the end.
Excellent.
Cool.
I haven't revised it though. My group can, scold me about that, but it's not it's just a rough draft.
Yeah, some of your rough drafts sound pretty good.
And Shandel's looking for a list of the poets you mentioned, in terms of spelling their names, Amelia. So if you want to put it in the chat, I don't know if you can do the chat, but you could put it there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll invite David to read, and David, what I'm going to do is mute everybody, and then I'll turn your sound on and let you know that you're ready to go. So just give me a sec. Okay, I've just asked you to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Say one more thing. You sound a little quiet to me.
A little quiet? I don't know how to do anything about that, but
Okay, I think can folks hear David? Okay,
up. Is there something where I can turn it up? I don't know.
that may be beyond my pay grade.
Well, it's beyond mine too, because I just got the earphones with apparently a little micy thing.
Whatever you just did, it got a lot louder.
Well,
So.
I put it up to my mouth.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I'm gonna mute myself and then you're ready to go.
all right. I don't have a pelican poem, but I have 2 bird poems, and they're relatively short. So, and they're kind of more bird metaphor poems, I guess, to be more accurate. And the first one I would consider kind of a lost muse poem, and it's called "To a Flicker in the Attic." Are you still trapped, my angel? Have you given up? I do not hear the thrashing of wings in the dim loft. In the thickest thicket, Every revision descends from above. The thrumming on the shell of my gray habit spells an urgent plea in the brittle warp of winter. Black stars collapse onto your breast, still beating in wonder as I take another wrong turn down the wrong street and end up stranded here. I miss you tapping at my window, waking up instead to these false alarms. How long did I spin round the sweet internal music, a deaf composer feeling vibrations through these spent, exhausted keys? How many stones must I throw before you take flight? When first we found our wings, you and I, the flash and flush of flight carried us from tree to tree to tree. It's hard these days to hold an edge, to pull myself out of a tailspin. So have I seen the last of you? I wonder. And this one's a pretty new poem from just a few weeks ago. It's called Goldfinch and the Sunflowers. Yellow on yellow, the art of camouflage confuses the eye. I faithfully water the garden every day where nodding heads filled with light invite the finches down to explore dense centers of seed around which soft coronas flare. By the time the sweet corn can turn an ear, I've learned to disappear, sending up a flare from so much darkness, not to declare any great feat, but to announce the seed is ready. Come get it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was lovely. Okay, we're going to do the same with Lindsay. So I will mute everybody and then unmute Lindsay. Okay, Lindsay, you should be ready.
Thank you. Like I said, yeah, for those of you who weren't here, I don't do pelicans, at least in present. So I have penguins I've been doing for a while. And this is one that I did a couple of years ago because this 365 anthology, every couple of years they put it in a collection. And this is from volume 2, volume 3 just came out. Anyway, this is a penguin's take on the universe. And I have a motto by Albert Einstein. Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Not just black and white, a man and a woman skate, glide, leap over a log, caught like some prehistoric dinosaur or a gnome who broke through ice too thin and fell in halfway. Its tail is now lodged, wedged between two worlds, like those of us who've trekked the earth long enough to learn. It turns upside down in that instant when too few heed those constellations that help us navigate ice flows and lead us home each night. And then here's the one I mentioned that actually Shango inspired because she did, instead of the 13 ways of a blackbird, her 13 ways of looking at a pelican. Well, I thought, because I had these penguin poems that weren't coming together, and they put most of them in here because I got to thinking, well, penguins are kind of funny. So how about 12 and a half ways of looking at a penguin? 1. Near our snow condos, penguins slide across ice. No ostrich plumes. These birds wear sleek Edwardian suits. 2. I have always walked like a penguin. In fact, I was born a penguin long ago, in the days when the ice caps were intact. 3. I slipped into church under knotted skies. There the gray day plummeted to black. 4. A man and a woman laugh at penguin prostitution. The birds must trade sex for rocks to build nest. 5. I herringboned up hills and slid on snowfields. I pecked through tundra to unearth pebbles and often came up empty. 6. Snow clings to branches and creates an enchanted silhouette against the gray horizon. A penguin strolls along the coast, searching for her mate. 7. Dr. Fiona Hunter says penguins stick with the same mates, but she adds, stones are valuable currency for them. That urgency creates reckless hens. 8. Such a day it was, a day when everything went asunder. Penguins thundered and cracked the ice when a sea lion raped a penguin hen. But some of the birds didn't care. 9. Take that penguin over there leaning against a snow wall. He stares into space, then waddles to a pool of balloons rising. 10. You grumble about Christmas and gatherings. Ignore these birds sliding by us now. Ignore the calls from family. 11. Your words fall like frogs from your mouth, and I say the world will end soon for these penguins skidding into the blue. 12. Today these gregarious birds waddle into politics. I figured they'd march for ecology, but no, the feathered creatures fight for civil rights. 12 and a half. I watch a penguin pile stones. She stops and looks into my eyes. We do not speak, but know. And I have one more, but I think I read it before, Silent Canopy. It was in Phantom Drift. So I know that David's in it. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, so Greg's next. So let me get him unmuted. Good. That looks like you're unmuted, Greg.
Yes. Okay. Well, as I said at the beginning, those of you who are here early, this is also not a pelican poem, but it was very much inspired by Shandell's poem. And as I said, I feel like penguins have been, pelicans have been pretty well covered now. So, although I love them very much. So I think most poets have, at least a certain number of obsessions, and they end up showing up in a lot of our work, even if unintentionally. So I try to cram as many of mine as possible as any particular poem will hold. And this one is called Snow Geese. And it has, it covers a few of my obsessions: birds, weather, the Great Plains where I grew up. And I guess that's it. But in any case, this is called Snow Geese for Shandell Bierce. I have a memory of snow geese flying fast over the plains like crafted clouds, wings dipped in India ink. All I knew of geese then was nursery rhymes and fairy tales, but these were different, powerful, purposeful, alive, visible to the inner eye long after they disappeared. Years later, my own hair turning white and snow geese left far behind back west, I rounded a corner in Maryland, east of the bay, in midwinter dusk along a darkening stubble field filling with snow. Drifting down too, white as the flakes, but edged in black, huge birds by the hundreds, maybe thousands. Eastern winter become, for one moment, Great Plains summer.
Thank you very much. Yay.
Put up my little clap thing.
Okay, it's my turn. So I'm just gonna get myself set up here. This poem is called Eulogy for the Green World. And yeah, I'll just read it. The pelican on the 2010 cover of Time magazine is blighted by oil. The title is How to Clean Up the Mess. I drive along the Columbia, a flock of brown pelicans gliding in formation over the chop beside me, despite their heavy-shouldered, heavy-jawed bodies. They throw their weight forward in impossible tribute, all fuselage and exhaust to lost brethren, a lost green world we once shared and now destroy. This gift we each exploit en route to salvation. I cannot stand against the institutions that feed this morning. I cannot even give up my car, my consumerism, my investments that I cling to like a life preserver, that great ring with an endless gap. When nothing remains, the only comfort is to touch and be touched. Thank you. Okay, now I'm gonna again unmute everybody. Just takes me a minute to do that. So folks want to chit chat.
Some lovely images
Yeah.
from everybody.
Everybody.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Toward a bad poem here tonight.
Nope. And all those birds.
Yeah, yeah, they're fluttering around. I don't have my name. I have my little penguin in my kitchen. There's not much room for any more in here, though. So I need another penguin here.
Well, before we quit tonight, I just want to remind you that next month on our third Wednesday, we have Jennifer Perrine who will be with us. And we're really looking forward to having her.
Is it Prine? I'm not familiar.
Perrine.
Oh, it sounded like it said prime. Did I just mishear it, or is that?
I can type it up. I'll put it in the chat.
It looks like Perrine, right?
Yes.
But it's pronounced prime.
It's going to be an interesting book. I'm not going to say much about it, but her book of poetry is based on often used words excessively by the present poets that have lost steam or have changed significance, like tremendous, beautiful.
See, I'm using gravitas this time.
Yeah, and the whole book was based on those words. So it's an interesting book. It's a lovely book.
Yeah.
What's the title?
Again.
Again?
Mm-hmm. So I think everybody is going to very much enjoy that presentation.
Oh yeah, it'll be after the 3rd.
Yeah, after the election.
We can, I hope, relax.
Well, I'm so glad you all could come tonight to celebrate Amelia's work and. Oh, sorry.
That was the little one.
Love the little voice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna turn off our recording. So I just want to thank you all for coming. But if you want to stick around and visit, feel free to do that. Just as if we were in the art center, hanging out with each other. So thank you all for coming, and hope to see you next month.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
thanks for having me. I feel like an honorary